I'm Ellen with blackfilm.com, and I'm talking with writer, director, and producer Deonis Young Stevens, recipient of this year's Academy Gold Student Academy Awards. Hi, Deanna.
Hi.
First of all, congratulations. This is a huge feat. Your documentary film, Not Just a Name, being selected as one of the winning films. How are you feeling? When and where were you, and how did it resonate when you first got the news?
Well, right now, I feel like I'm still pinching myself. It's truly unbelievable and such an honor. And when I found out about the news, I was actually here at the house,
Yeah.
and I was on a Zoom call, and that's where I found out about
Okay.
winning the award.
Wow, and I can relate. Well, not relate. I can imagine rather how shocking that must have been, and that's probably something that you're going to be feeling for a minute. And so, when was the documentary made, and what led up to the creation of the film?
So, actually, what led up to the creation of the film was the fact that I saw people coming into their own truths and announcing that they were going to go by their original name and stop shortening their names. And the documentary process, I would say, started a year ago. I took a prep class at USC where I developed the concept and really broke everything down, created a treatment. And then from that class, I took an advanced class that focused on
Mhm.
the doc called 547. And that's when I started filming in January of this year, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I filmed for about 3 months and then went into post.
Okay. And
Mhm.
you knew going into it that this was going to be a documentary film as opposed to, let's say, a short. And so, what made you make that decision, for lack of a better word?
Well, actually, I knew that this was gonna be a documentary for a very long time.
Okay,
When I pitched the concept in the prep class, it was specifically a documentary class, and I knew then that that's what
gotcha.
I do. Mhm.
And you made me think about Thandie Newton changing her name back to Thandue, and I've seen that sort of happening a lot more. And so, what do you think is sort of the catalyst of those changes happening now, as opposed to 5, 10, or 15 years ago?
Well, I think people are just learning to be confident with themselves, and I think that there's a lot of awareness that's happening, not just with names, but just who an individual is as a person and just standing up for who they are and not making others comfortable. So I think
Gotcha.
that's what's happening.
And so, the title of the film is Not Just a Name. Can you talk a bit about why you chose that title?
Yes, I think that the documentary focuses on a different kind of discrimination, and it's with our name, and it deals with one's identity, like what creates a name. Like your name is not just something that your parents pick; it's the first gift that you receive, and there's a lot of thought that goes into that. Whether parents are focused on the cultural aspects of it or what the name truly means, whether it means strength, warrior, they
Mhm.
want that to be characteristics that their child could possibly have growing up.
And so, what it's a documentary film. How long is it?
It's 23 minutes.
It's a documentary short, okay.
Mhm.
And so the question that kind of came up as I was sort of doing my own research on this, I haven't seen it yet. I'm looking forward to seeing it. But I imagine it brings up the question about race and naming. And instead of why do Black people use these names, it should be why do we only focus on Black people in these conversations? And so, does the documentary sort of dig into that as well as the history of naming?
It does dig into the history of naming, and it does deal with, or it does dig into why parents choose to name their children these ethnic Black names.
Gotcha. And so the people that are featured in the documentaries, like, could you talk a bit about the tone of it, and I guess what you want people to sort of walk away from feeling from watching your documentary film?
Yeah, I want this documentary to bring awareness to those who are not confident to raise the issue of the name shaming aspects. I mean, I used to go to school
Mhm.
with kids who would not raise their hand when the teachers called roll to correct them. And the entire year, the student went by a name that wasn't theirs. So I
Wow.
want this documentary to bring awareness to allow those to be confident. And then I also wanted to bring awareness to those who are part of the issue, those who are not respecting people with these names that have valuable meaning to them.
It makes me think about my own experiences with my last name being sort of a challenge coming from a different country and being teased about my last name in grammar school and in high school, and to some degree as an adult, it happens. Certainly not the way that it did in high school or grammar school, but it still happens. Did you ever face any of those challenges with your name? Can you talk a bit about that and the inspiration, I guess, behind the film?
Yes, so my first name has 2 capital letters and an apostrophe. And whenever I took tests, my test would come back and I would have to fill out the form again and change the spelling of my name so that the machine could process my name. And so I took the apostrophe out and I took the capital letter out. And once I did that, I just shortened it in real life. And when I applied to grad school, I used the name that I changed. When I introduced myself to other people, I used the name that I changed. And so it really affected me. But my name pays homage to my grandparents. The DE comes from my grandmother, and the ON comes from my grandfather, Ronald. And when I took the
Mhm.
apostrophe out, I realized that I was removing the valuable aspect of my name so that others could feel good about themselves. And it kind of made me feel small in a way because my grandparents are folks that I honor, and I love them.
Mhm.
And to take that valuable part away from me was something that I was battling.
Wow, that's deep, because you really don't think about the significance of a name in that context. And I appreciate that your film will help people start thinking about that differently. And to your point, start feeling a little bit more prideful about the origins of their name and what it means, especially because it's tied to their families. Um, a question that came up was, what sort of challenges did you have shooting this film? I know it was on a student film budget, right? And so, how did all that come together?
There were a lot of challenges. This is a COVID production, so I
Mm,
directed the entire thing through Zoom.
okay.
I
Oh,
had to drop
wow.
Yeah, I had to drop the camera equipment off, the sound equipment off to subjects in the film, and they had to set everything up themselves, and so there was a lot of patience involved and just trying to feel confident about the whole process because, I think as a director, you're always just trying to focus on the small things, and I realized I had to
Mhm.
let those things go for the bigger picture. And so I think the biggest challenge was just trusting everyone from the crew who was doing their thing through Zoom, my DP who was setting up the frame through Zoom and connecting to the subjects, the questions that I had to ask, and just the level of patience that I think was required for this whole process.
And how did you go about finding the participants in the documentary?
Some of the participants I knew personally,
Okay.
and then I also used Craigslist.
Ah,
Craigslist,
okay.
yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Craigslist would be the place to go. Okay. I'm so excited about this because I've had these sorts of conversations with my friends, but never in the context of like watching it in a film and then let's engage in dialogue about that because I feel like it's going to open up so much more that we're probably not even thinking about. So thank you for that. I think
Thank
that's awesome
you.
that you're making that happen. And I mean, what do you want people to know about this that we haven't discussed? And where can we watch this? Where can we find you on social media? How can we support you further?
I think this is really just about embracing others, not just for their names, but just for who the individual is altogether, just accepting people because we all come from all walks of life. And I know the name shaming situation isn't something that the Black community faces. There are other communities that face this as well. I had the pleasure of interviewing someone from Jewish background whose ancestors changed their last name so that they could assimilate into American culture. So I think it's just about embracing everyone from all walks of life, no matter where they come from, what their name is. And then you can find me on social media. I really use Instagram, and my Instagram name is Time for Tree, TimeFortree. And this film will be playing on KCET on October 21st, so you can find it there. And
And I
it's
meant
still in
to
the circuit.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I meant to ask you what the significance of the name Tree is.
Mhm. So Tree is my nickname.
Okay.
And my friends always said that I had strong roots like a tree, and I'm nurturing like
Mm.
a tree as the animals. So when the birds go home to their trees, they feel like they're coming home to me, and I'm taking care of them in every way possible. So that's where it comes from.
I love that. I just got chills all over as you were explaining that.
Thanks.
When I saw the name, I made a mental note to ask you about that because I thought it was unique.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking with blackfilm.com. Again, congratulations. It
Thank
is
you.
a huge feat considering the weight of your documentary film and how it's going to be a bit of a game changer in terms of how we feel and how we look at our names as it relates to name shaming. Because I've never really thought about that name shaming, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I think the film just really explores like stigma and racial bias experienced by African Americans with these unique names and the historical origin. And I think it's just a learning lesson just for people. I mean, when I created this film, I learned that it wasn't just things that white people were doing to judge blacks or other ethnicities were
Mm,
doing. It was an internalized thing as well that other blacks do to other blacks as well. It was just such an educational experience for me altogether.
wow. I am so looking forward to watching this. Thank you for making it. Thank you for bringing it out into the forefront. And thank you again for talking with blackfilm.com.
Thank you so much for having me.